Hmm? 30 seconds, sure. No problem. You'll tell me when you're ready.
Yes, I agree. Yes.
Yeah? Now? When everyone is ready, please give me a thumbs up. Ne?
I will advise.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Bishop. Everyone else?
We'll wait for you.
No, it's fine.
Yeah. No, brother, we still have an outstanding discussion, but let's see if in the new discussion.
Sure.
It just makes sense now. Are you right? Sisters, are you right? My brother, are you right?
Okay.
Sisters, are you right?
Let's put that chair for
Sige. Let's go for it. Let's
That's why we're being shared. This is what we have to do.
Okay, colleagues, are we ready?
Yes.
All right, we will commence.
go, guys.
Yes. Yeah.
4, 3, 2, 1.
All right, thanks, colleagues. Season greetings to everyone, and thank you for joining us on this Monday morning of the 23rd of December, which is right in the middle of holiday festivities for the Minister of Dr. Ramokgopa's last media briefing for this financial. So today the Minister will be taking us through a reflection energy action plan, but also the Minister will on the preferred bidders, the Renewable Energy Independent Power Producer Procurement Program, Bid Window 7, as well as Bid Window 2 of the battery energy storage. So colleagues, this media briefing, or this morning rather, the Minister is joined by our esteemed colleagues from ESCOM, Mr. Caleb Kasim, who is the financial or the Chief Financial Officer at ESCOM. He's also standing in for the GCE, Mr. Dan Marukana. Next to him is Ms. Daphne Mokoena, ESCOM's spokesperson, who has always joined us in all our regular media briefings. Next to Daphne, we've got Mr. Dan, who is from the Generation Division. And then next to him, we've got Mr. Gabriel Khabo from the Distribution Division at ESCOM. Next to Mr. Dan Mashiko, we've got Mr. Bernard Magoro, who is the CEO of the IPP office, the Independent Procurement or the Independent Power Procurement Office. So colleagues, with that, I would like to invite the Minister to officially kick us off today's briefing with his presentation, after which he and the rest of the panel will be very happy to respond to any questions that you may have. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you very much, Tsakani, and good morning to members of the media and those who are watching us at home. Just to express once more our most appreciation at members of the media's availability, making it possible for us to communicate with the South Africans, both the industry and households, in relation to the update as it pertains to the performance of the grid. Last week, Thursday, we had a media briefing where ESCOM was releasing the audited financial statements. And I did make the point that there's a relationship between the financial performance and also the operational performance, really anchored by the generation recovery plan. So we have taken the liberty of ensuring that we continue with our cadence of sharing with the country the performance of the grid, as I make the point all the time that we're within touching distance of the resolution of load shedding, but we are not necessarily out of the woods yet. I think it's important that I underline that point so that there's a common appreciation across the country that even though we're seeing the kind of phenomenal performance that we're seeing, it is important that we continue to fix our eyes on the bouncing ball, and that bouncing ball is to ensure that we end load shedding, and then in the long term to ensure that we are able to provide a sufficient headspace for the South African economy to grow. So I'm going to take the opportunity just first to do a recap of, if you like, the journey that we have traveled and also the kind of performance that we are seeing, one, and two, share with what are the immediate outlook of generation performance going into the future. And then the third aspect is to share with you the issues around the preferred bid windows, as mentioned earlier, just the announcement on bid window number 7, and also bid window number 2 on battery storage. These are important because they are an affirmation of the fact that we want to bring on stream different types of technologies to ensure that we are able to achieve one organization ambitions as articulated in our nationally determined contributions. Remember that we have made a promise to our people first and also to the world that we do appreciate that 80% of generation capacity comes from fossil fuels. So we've got a responsibility that we are able to address issues of air quality, which has got a significant health implication for those people who are living within the immediate proximity of or radius, within a particular radius of this power station. So we have that responsibility to the health of our people. And then secondly, we also have a responsibility to ensure that we reduce the CO2 emissions as part of that global agenda of addressing the scourge of climate change. So science has illustrated that there is at least a correlation between these emissions, greenhouse gas emissions, and also climate change. So as the most industrialized economy on the continent, accounting for a third of the emissions, and globally, let's just say about 0.9% of the total emissions. We still think we're of the opinion that we have that responsibility. Of course, industrialized powers of the global north responsibility, including financing this transition. But first and foremost, we owe it to our people. That's the point I want to make. So the bid windows in relation to solar and wind helps to articulate the kind of mix that we want to have. So we're not relenting on that front. So it's important that we intensify, if anything, intensify that effort of ensuring that we have a new generation capacity. And this has been enabled, of course, going into the future by the amendment of the principal piece of legislation, which is the Electricity Regulation Act. And I'm sure a lot of you would have seen that is going to operation from the 1st of January 2025. And consistent with any piece of legislation, I'll also be releasing the regulations. So the issue of regulations that support the enactment of legislation is common practice in government. I want to make that point clear. So in relation to generation performance, I think it is important to, at this point, just to applaud the work that the generation team has been able to execute at ESCOM. You remember that we started from an low base, the calendar year 2023, and we're able to show also the financial year 24, that is starting from the 1st of April 2023, ending the last day of March 2024. We have seen the highest intensity of load shedding in terms of the number of days that we experienced load shedding and the number of hours that the country was subjected to periods of no electricity. And that in with the generation the financial performance. If you are not generating, you don't have a product to sell. If you don't have a product to sell, then you are not in a position earn any revenue. And we have seen the numbers that the ESCOM was announcing last week that we recorded a significant loss, but we also are showing that as a result of this improved performance, our projection is that we should be at a minimum achieving about the surplus by the end of the financial year. So, what is the story of the calendar year? So, we have seen that at least on the 23rd of December, in fact, now the 23rd of December, essentially we are recording another milestone in that we are experiencing the longest stretch of uninterrupted power supply in 5 years. It's an important milestone, and like I said, we are not so the end result of our work is not about just ending load shedding. It's a minimum but not sufficient requirement for us to achieve energy sovereignty. But it's important that we take account of this work that we are doing. So for every milestone that we register, I think it's something in we are able to elevate just a confirmation that we are on the right track. So like I said, the 23rd of December today is in fact another milestone that we have achieved. And what are some of the manifestations of this performance is that we've been able to experience the reduction in what we call unplanned capacity loss factor. So essentially, the degree to which these units are failing on their own and the degree to which these units are not performing efficiently. So the intention there is to bring down that number. Once you bring down that number, we have more megawatts on the grid. So we've seen an improvement of about 8.1 percentage points. So this time sitting at 24.9 UCLF. So what that means is that we've got more the team has been able to achieve, and I'll share with you what they underpin that scaling way, because it's important. The ESCOM lessons, they are able to help us to generate a template on how you are able to recover from a very difficult situation. So it's a template you can take to any of the SOEs, of course, adapt it to the particular nuances of that particular SOEs. But I think that transversal, if you like, experiences that can be drawn from the ESCOM experience. And I'll share with you what those transversal elements are. And from the megawatt terms, in megawatt terms, the unplanned outages averaged about 11.6 gigawatts in the past 7 days, compared to the similar period of about 12.3 megawatts. So I'm talking about last year, and that's where we're beginning to see, if you like, the curve moving in the right direction. But if you look at what has been the recovery from the intensity of load shedding that we had experienced, remember, we are recording losses of up to 18,000 megawatts, and now we're averaging, as we are indicating, about 11.6 megawatts. We've been able to claw back more than 6,000 megawatts available on the grid, and this makes it possible for us to be able to absorb any failures like we've experienced the incident at Matla. If you have a cluster of units failing, you have significant headroom for you to be able to absorb such kind of incidents without necessarily having to resort to load shedding. And I'll also share with you what has been the immediate past performance. At least the past week or so, we have had these failures, and we have not seen any initiation of shedding because the team had sufficient runway. From an availability factor, so the efficiency of the performance of the grid in its totality, we are seeing that from the period, the 1st of April until the 19th of December this year, we have seen an average of 62.5%, which is an improvement from what was about 55.4% of performance. So that's the kind of improvement that we are beginning to see going into the future, and it's something that we want to sustain over an extended period of time. What does that mean in rand value terms? So it means that as a result of this performance, we've been able to save about 16.6 billion rand stopping us from banning diesel. We have spent 16.06 billion less than what was the spend the similar period last year. But just the beginning of December until the 19th, we've seen an increased use of diesel as a result of those incidents that I've shared with you. The incident at Matla and some of the units just delaying coming back. But I'm saying you have not seen load shedding because we have built sufficient runway for us to be able to absorb this, and we're confident that again the team is doing everything possible to ensure that we are able to sustain this performance going into the future. So this is significant because once we are able to reduce the cost associated with diesel, it means that the ESCOM is becoming a more efficient generator of electricity. We are able to sustain this over a period of time. Is going to find itself in tariff applications going into the future because we are becoming more and more efficient, and we are able to pass on this benefit to the end consumer. This 16 billion should not be sitting with the ESCOM. It should be in the pockets of the consumer because those are the kind of efficiencies that we have realized, and it's going to support the South African economy, making sure that uh, the production and the manufacturing that relies on electricity also becomes more efficient. In fact, our goods are becoming a bit more competitive when they come into the market, whether the domestic market or national market. I think it's important that we're able to have that appreciation. So, what has been the driver of the performance that we're seeing? So, when we started this exercise, we thought that it's important that you must have a plan. So that the overarching plan that directed the work that was that the energy action plan that the president introduced in 2022. And what the president did was to ensure that there's leadership to execute on that plan. So the appointment of ESCOM board, the new board led by Dr. Teto, and also the stabilization of management. Now, Mr. Caleb Kasim led this process, that transition process, until a period where ESCOM was able to appoint a permanent group interim period. What the board and Mr. Kasim was to ensure that we got stability at some of our key power stations. And I'll share with you what those key power stations are and what defines key in this instance. That there must be stability there. You get people with the right skills and competence and also experience to be able to recover those power stations. So leadership was important in the execution of that plan. So the president articulated the plan. That plan had got five outcomes. Outcome that directly relates to ESCOM, which has to do with ensuring that we are able to improve the energy availability, the performance of the installed capacity at ESCOM. That it's particularly unhelpful to think in the immediate of new generation capacity when in fact you've got the sunk cost, installed a fleet of generators that were not performing. So the best turnaround, the shortest path to relieving us of load shedding was to increase that performance. So that gets to be articulated in that plan. And on the back of that plan, then you get the leadership that is able to support that plan. So from an ESCOM side, the board and also management, but also the president took an extraordinary step of ensuring that he appoints an executive authority just transfixed on the resolution of load shedding. So almost like dealing with the load shedding problem as if you are dealing with a project. And I mentioned on that what underpin the work that we've been doing is a project management approach to a resolution of a problem. So not necessarily seeing yourself as a classic, in the classic sense as a minister, but someone who's must get their hands dirty and making sure that there's great levels of alignment between the technical side and also the political side, and ensuring that we execute against the plan, we measure our performance against the plan. You remember I used to make the point where when we're experiencing a highest intensity of load shedding, that the short-term pain, long-term gain, made the point that we needed to take the units out to ensure that we fix them. And when they return, we're all going to see the fruits of of that effort, and we're beginning to see that. I'm saying we're beginning to see it because we want to sustain this beyond 200. We want to make it just an abnormal conversation for us to have a discussion about 272 days of no load shedding. It must become a common practice. It is an expectation that there shouldn't be load shedding in a most industrialized economy such as ours, with the size of the installed fleet that we had. And then it was that we isolated power stations. And there were power stations that were our best performers, the primary anchors of ensuring that there is some supply of electricity to the country. Even if you had stage 6, stage 5 of load shedding, there were periods, significant periods in the day where electricity was provided. And we took a view that these stations needed to be protected. What are the stations? Letabo, Mitupi, Matimba, and the picking stations. They played a big part in ensuring relieve ourselves of the degree of the intensity of load shedding. Yes, load shedding was present. Load shedding had a devastating impact on the South African economy, the lived experiences of ordinary people. But it would have been worse if we dropped the ball and not protect these assets that we're giving us, that we're getting, and ensuring that at least the economy keeps on going and minimize the harm that is inflicted on the South African economy. And then we said there's a second category of power stations. So these are power stations that are responsible for 70% at the time, responsible for 70% of the total losses. So instead of being all over the place, wanting to fix everything, you end up achieving nothing. And we said that let's isolate these power stations for particular attention. And I'm saying that isolating them was on the basis of the fact that together they contributed about 70% of the losses. There's something in science, we call it the Pareto principle. 20% effort, 80% return. So that's what influence the prioritization of this station. Which are those stations? Tutuka, Duva, Majuba, Matla graduated out of this category of priority stations. Problematic, and in fact, Matla has become one of our best performing power stations, notwithstanding the incident that we had just the other day. Kusile has graduated also out of those problematic power stations. And really, Kusile was as a result of those 3 units. Remember, that had to be taken as a result of the challenges on the flue gas desulfurization units. And then we got an interim reprieve from the Minister of Fisheries and Forestry, allowed us to have construct a temporary stake and allow us an opportunity first to have the units performing, giving us the megawatts that we want, and also making sure that we are able to return, if you like, the original design of the FGD, as we had fixed the chimney that represented in our own calculation a major danger to, if you like, to the power station, because we needed to do structural assessment on the chimney, ensure that the FGD also works, and in fact progress in that regard. And then we said one of the areas that required attention was the long-term operation of Quebec. So we started with Quebec unit number 1, took it out, went through the rigors of the licensing requirements. Remember that Quebec had a life of 40 years, so we want to extend it by another 20 years. So we decouple the units, so we don't treat Quebec as a monolithic power stations. We isolate the Quebec unit number 1, unit number 2, and we went out to seek an extension of life of this unit. So we started with unit number 1, and we said that if we succeed, we've got another 20 years of generation coming from nuclear, and we now know that we have received the go-ahead from the regulator, and in fact, this has been achieved. And then we also said, to the extent that we don't have the skills. So once we map what the problem state power stations are, what are the areas that are experienced in the individual power stations, and you juxtapose that against the skills that are required in areas where we find that the skills deficit. So what resides in ESCOM internally is not sufficient to help us resolve this problem. Then you go outside looking for the additional skills. So we thought that it is important that although we the ESCOM has got the highest density of engineers in the country, the most experienced. There might be other areas where we need some assistance. So it's important that we are able to collaborate with the external parties who are deliberate in that effort. It's not your normal procurement of goods and services, but in fact, it's part of a deliberate effort. So we thought let's ensure there's a skills match. So the problem statement, how we want to resolve this problem, and also we did the skills matching, and to the extent that the misalignments, we're able to get some skills from outside. So really, that's what drove this intervention. So what are these transversal experiences? First is that a plan has to be in place. That plan must be measurable, actionable, and then there has to be consequences if you are unable to achieve that. And then you must get the kind of leadership across all levels. So from the executive authority level, the board with its fiduciary duties and ability to articulate a generation recovery plan, and then also from management point of view, from the point of execution, and also providing the necessary incentives. And then once the leadership is in place, they are able to design a plan that is helping us to resolve the short-term problem. Let's say it contributes to a long-term solution, and that's what ESCOM has done. And I guess that is a template that can be taken to other SOEs as part of sharing the learning experiences. I think it's going to be very going forward. And so the result of that is we have seen that the energy availability, the 5 and so that there's an appreciation that we're on the right path. So there has to be a target against which you should be measured. Of course, the lights are on, but we want to do on, but we want to help the South African economy to grow. So against those targets we've set ourselves, we've successfully executed Quebec Unit number 1, the licensing extension of license. So now we know that the 980 megawatts from Quebec Unit number 1 is guaranteed to the country for the next 20 years. As we are working on unit excellent performance of Midupi. Midupi was becoming a bit more, like I said, it was one of those power stations that were. So it's important that you are able to maintain that excellent, if you like, performance, and also with Letabo, also with Matimba. Remember what I said here: protect those that are weak. Make sure that they don't get into a category of those that are underperforming, or those that contribute to the catastrophic failure of the grid from a megawatts point of view. So we're able to protect them. So again, we think that, and of course, we embedded the principles of operational excellence. So that operational excellence, we set ourselves what is the target of the number of failures, not just per power stations, but per unit, making sure that ensuring that we get the right skills, ensuring that you are able to provide the right incentives for the type of performance that you've set yourself as a target that people must be rewarded. In the process, we're addressing the internal skills. So I did feel that as you do that matrix of trying to understand what are your common areas of failure and what are the skills available to address those common areas of failure, we're able to discover that we can do a lot more in ensuring that we've got the skills as opposed to relying from outside assistance. Of course, in the immediate, you needed that outside assistance, but over a period of time, self-reliant. I mean, an organization the size of ESCOM, self-reliant, self-sufficient. So we are addressing those skills gap. And that skills gap is informed by our articulation of what constitutes the problem statement in the immediate, and the kind of ambition that we want going into the future. So it's not just limited to addressing the load shedding problem, but it's also about the kind of future that we want. Remember, what is that future? It's greener, cleaner, and it's a mix of technologies. So it's important that ESCOM gears itself for that. And then prevent outage slips, which contributes to the UCLF. And I've been able to show you that the kind of performance that we are seeing, it speaks to the fact that the number of failures and repeat failures are coming down. So the team has been able to achieve that. And Unit 1, 2, and 3 was key. in this recovery area, 2,400 megawatts, three units, of each picking about 800 megawatts. Like I said, from the Department of Fishery, Forestry, and the Environment, and then we're able to get the benefit of that. Those three units, 2,400 additional megawatts. Again, we tick that box, and then the synchronization of unit number 5, we've been able to achieve that. Now we're going to unit number 6. So we take the unit number 5, so we're getting a benefit of that 800 megawatts. And then we had to review the plant shutdown date. Remember that we had committed to an agenda of greening generation in the country, and set ourselves that by this date, X number of megawatts will go out. And of course, what that generation, the shutdown did not respond to is, as you take out this, how are you going to replace them? And it must be one for one, so like for like, if you like, from a generation perspective. So what I mean is that we know that we had accelerated the new generation capacity coming from renewables, wind and solar, but we know it's technical limitations, they are non-dispatchable. Like now, we're experiencing inclement weather, at least to the north of the country. So you don't have the benefits of those rooftop solar solution for those that they install their households and various industries. So you must draw from the grid. So it's important that you get the mix right. And so as you shut down, you must be able to ensure that you are protecting, if you like, the backbone. And that backbone of yours is sustainable supply of electricity. And we know that the coal provides that answer. We know that nuclear provides that answer. Gas to power provides that answer, but we are not sitting preaching that on that score we don't have gas to power, if you like, generation capacity. All we have is when I said it's extraordinary expensive. So it's important that we are able to protect base load as we are onboarding renewables, and then you are fixing the grid. Its modernization, the greater the penetration of renewables, the greater the risk to the grid. So you need to protect the grid, modernize it, and ensure that it's able to accommodate generation capacity, but also expand it. And that's why this announcement I'm making on bid window number 7, very important. New generation capacity, bid window number 2, battery storage, very important, because once we have the renewables paired with battery storage, what that does, it approximate conditions of base load. And that's the kind of what I call hybridization of generation in the country. So it's about this piece that we're talking about. So these are the results that we got. We're getting closer to that 65 energy availability factor. But we need to think beyond this. For the country to grow at 2% point of the GDP to grow by 2 percentage points, to get investments into the country, to get people working, to increase capacity utilization at various factories, the reliability of this supply, and in addition to that, the new generation capacity. So in relation to our ambition for the EAF for the financial year 25, we will achieve 70%. And I'll show you how we think we can get close to that 70% of new generation capacity that is coming on stream, and the recovery of some of the units that they have. So one is the need for us to return Medupi unit number 4. Has been out for about 3 to about 5 years or so as a result of a catastrophic fire there. So it's important that we return it. And I'll give you what those timelines are that we have set for ourselves internally. Remember that it's one thing about what those timelines are, so that we hold ourselves internally accountable, and also myself, when I communicate to the company, I'm able to say we X number of megawatts by this date, and this is how far we are. And I think it talks to the kind of transparency that we want. And then commercial operation of unit number 5, like I said, that we've ticked. We are synchronizing unit number 6, and I'll give you the dates in relation to that, and continuous focus on current and future skills. So, not where we at, we need to build on those skills going forward like I said, an emerging area of focus now is the challenges on the distribution side, which I'll speak to a bit later. So you need that skills to support a renewed ESCOM. As we reset this ESCOM, when I say reset, from a leadership governance point of view, from a financial performance point of view, but also meet requirements of an evolving electricity industry, and not just in the country, but in the world, and also in the context of the Electricity Regulation Act. I think it's important that ESCOM continues to be a big and sizable player in that context. Of course, there is additional competition, which is great for the performance of the economy, and in fact should be great for the consumer competition. The classic says these prices should come down. Of course, doesn't always work in that sense, but I'm just saying the classics will say that that should be the case. And then unit number two, Quebec, we need to return it, like I said, long-term extension in this instance. So we will return it, and we'll still go through the regards of the requirements of the national the nuclear regulator to ensure that we meet what the requirements are, so that there's a safe operation of this Quebec going forward. So that's what's going to define, if you like, the next phase 2025. You'll see that when we come sometime next year, we'll also talk beyond 2025. So ESCOM being a player in relation to new generation capacity on clean technologies. So we'll articulate what that is and what will be the share of cleaner technologies within the ESCOM fleet. So I'm not accounting for what's happening in the private sector. Of course, the two must be read together. But I think we'll isolate ESCOM for obvious reasons, because it's still a dominant player also on the generation side. Like too big to fail. So we must do some highlights, the number of no load shedding days, 272, and best performance that they have experienced, and the EAF of 16 billion rand. And then we are continuing to invest in the new skills. So these are greener, these are skills that will support this a green transition. 7 gigawatts reduction in plant capacity loss factor. So we've been able to whittle down the number of losses, aggregate losses from 18,000 megawatts to about 11,000 megawatts. And that's why you have seen the kind of performance that you are seeing, and plan the maintenance higher year on year. So this must give you the comfort. It must give you the comfort that we still continue to do the right things. That, in fact, as I speak to you now, the plan maintenance the total generation capacity. So we're not dropping the ball. We're thinking about tomorrow. We're thinking about the future. We need to invest in ensuring that these units no, don't rest on your laurels. Be complacent and say, no, this is no load shedding. 272 days, a milestone in 5 years. No, we want to get to a point that we completely eliminate load shedding in our vocabulary. Or if we speak about load shedding, we speak about load shedding about load shedding as an experience that we don't have to go back to. So that will be our relationship with load shedding. But going forward is about sustainability of supply, affordable supply, and reliable supply. And then, like I said, it is important that, at least from a planning point of view, speak in aggregate terms. Of course, when I come to the public, I speak about the generating ability, capacity in aggregate terms. I put everything in one basket. But maybe just to give you an insight, then we go station by station. And this is just to show you. Remember, I said there were those that we prioritize. This has been the performance of those power stations. Remember, what was our target? Our target was to bring down the number of failures, what we call the unplanned capacity loss factor. Well, how have we done against those? So I think it's important that you have this appreciation. The first one was to Tuka. We can see that the losses were sitting at about 2,600 megawatts. We brought them down by 60%. You go to Kendall, we brought them down by about 35%. You go to Majuba, we brought them down by 33%. 30%. You go to Kusile, brought it down by 52%. When I say brought it down, so the units are now beginning to give us additional megawatts. And that's why I talk about the plant capacity loss factor averaging about 11,000 gigawatts. We have moved from 18,000 is as a result of this collective work that the team has been doing. Ed Grill brought it down, you can see, about 3%, doing as well as we should. So that's important, that although the net picture is positive, but we don't rely on the net picture. We're going to isolate individual units in that stable. So you can see Grill, and then Arnold, in fact, we have not been able to achieve the kind of targets that we have set for ourselves. And in fact, it has deteriorated by 20. And Matra, of course, an improvement of 35%. What is the point I'm making here? Is that if you look at the net picture, you'll be complacent and say, no. And we know that we've got a problem in Krill. We know that we've got a problem in Arnold. And we'll fix that problem. But what the team has done is that we have done remarkably well that the general public does not see the effects of us underperforming at Arnold and Krill, and that the underperformance will be expressed in load shedding. You are not seeing it, but internally we know we're sitting with this problem. And that's why when I come to the public, I say it's important that we're very transparent and easy in our communication of this messaging. When I say we're not necessarily out of the woods, I want to see green, and these numbers, in fact, must be greater than what we are seeing. Of course, 65% improvement is phenomenal. 50% improvement is phenomenal. But I don't necessarily think that when we're in the 30s, it's phenomenal. So we really want to continue to bring it. It's important that I get to share that with you, that we are transfixed on the resolution of these challenges. Of course, we communicated the summer outlook. So essentially, there are two periods from a planning point of view. There's a winter outlook and then there's a summer outlook. ESCOM communicated the summer outlook, and in that summer outlook, ESCOM makes the point that if the total number of losses are 13,000 megawatts and below, we should not see load shedding. And we're up about anything that window, if you like, is we had best periods 8,900 and then up to 12,500. So we're significantly lower than the best case scenario, and that's why you are not seeing this load shedding. And of course, in instances where there are those incidents like we've seen in Matla, they get to be absorbed, if like in the surplus that we have created for ourselves. So what those incidents did was to eat in our surplus without leading us to load shedding. But then what this says, the kind of performance that we are seeing is that it is possible for us to be able to support the South African economy if it were to grow by anything between 2.5 to 3.5 percentage points. Once we reach that the energy availability factor of 70%. Remember, load shedding, what it did was to reverse, if you like, contract South Africa's GDP. And then once we get to a situation where there's a sustained period of no load shedding, there's greater confidence in the South African economy, in comes back, and then you want to go back to pre-load shedding days in relation to economic performance. So that's the next stage. But the ultimate is to ensure that we support the growth of the South African economy. And for us to achieve that, we need to get an EAF to about 70%. And I did say we are not there yet, but we are confident that by the next financial year, starting now in April of 2025, we should get close to that 25%, 70%, I'm sorry, of EAF. So what are the immediate possibilities for us to get additional megawatts? So how are we going to get to that 70% to support the South African economy? Kubek unit number 2 is out because refueling the steam generator, I know that has been successfully refueled. We have closed it. I think we have started. Dan will share with us. The last time I checked, we're about to start unit number 2, and then we should get, if you like, this megawatts by early January. So remember that this 930 is sitting in the megawatts that are not available. Now we're bringing these megawatts on stream. Unit number 6, this is new generation capacity. Doesn't get to be accounted for in the megawatts that are out because it was never available in the first instance. So remember that Kusile is still a construction site. So unit number 6 is the last of the units. I did say earlier that we're able to synchronize unit number 5, and now unit number 5 is commercial. Remember, for a period of 3 months, you still do your testing, you are synchronizing, there are errors there, you fix those errors. Once you say you give it the thumbs up, then it becomes commercially available. Then we start to account for it as the megawatts that should be available. When it's not available, it brings down the EAF. Unit number 6, we don't account for it as available, so the team, they'll synchronize it, and then it will still give us the megawatts. They'll take it out, fix it, if you like. You are able to address the snags in civil engineering terms, and once it's right, you give it the thumbs up. Because of about 3 months, then it becomes commercially available. Then you account for it now when the megawatts that are available. So that's an additional 800 megawatts. So that's new. And then Midupi number 4, it's what we had before. So when I say the UCLF is sitting at that 18,000 megawatts previously, now at 11,000, I'm also accounting that number, this 794, because it was there available. So we started to account for it, and then we lost it for a period. Now we are returning it. When we anticipate to return it, we anticipate rather to return it by March or April of 2025. So if you like, the last beginning of the second quarter of next year. So if you put all of this together, it's about 2,500 megawatts that we are going to get of generation capacity. And from the UCLF point of view, 1,600 megawatts of new, or 1,700 megawatts of new generation capacity of a reduction in UCLF. That's a unit number 2 and Medupi unit number 4. And then on the aggregate generation, 800 megawatts from Kusile unit number 6. So we're getting an additional 2,500 megawatts. So you can see now, getting very, very close to that target of 70% EAF. And then we must continue to do those improvements. Those power stations, I did tell you that we're not getting the kind of results we want there at Kendall. We're not getting the kind of results we know that at Arnold. And then we should be then, once we get it right, we should be close to 70%. So when we mention 70%, it's not an arbitrary number. It's a number derived from science. And it's a number that is engineering science. Let me qualify that. And then we know that we have the skills to get to that level. And that's the level of confidence that we have. And the team internally, they know they get to be measured against those targets. We communicate to the public, but the public has got two big interests. First is that there will not be load shedding. Second is that you must contribute to the stimulation of the South African economy so that we are able to reach these levels of 2.5 to 3.5 growth going into the future. As I move to conclusion, our biggest challenge now is distribution. So distribution, previously, we were not seeing this challenge in the manner that we are seeing now. What do I mean? So everything was clustered under load shedding. So there's load shedding, the lights are off for a particular period. Once we are able to get 270 days of load shedding, you got a clearer picture, it crystallizes. Then you have load reduction. You begin to see centers of challenges where there's overloading downstream. So we know we're sitting with a big, big problem that requires our attention. Of course, we can make a valid argument that you should have address these issues in parallel. Yes, you are absolutely right, but we also had to attach weighting. What is that weighting? At the primary concern at an aggregate level. You get that, and then we continue to ensure that then the focus is on distribution. I want to make the point that particularly unhelpful to go out and seek to be adventurous and say we'll resolve everything at the go. Simply not possible. Well, it's possible. But I think what is possible is for us to ensure that you streamline what the interventions are. You prioritize what you think immediate challenge. And we know that load shedding was throttling the South African economy. Now we get into the issues of distribution. So we need to ensure that from a demand side management point of view, we are able to continue to accelerate that program. Remember that part of those outcomes, there's outcome number 4 that talks to the rollout of load of rooftop solar solution. So we should not drop the ball on that. So we should roll that out behind the meter intervention for your own consumption, but also with demand side management, the rollout of smart meters. It helps us to remotely ensure that we provide additional layer of technical capacity to the system operator to ensure that we are able to protect the grid going forward. And then a major challenge of existential problem that is facing us, and we spoke about this at nauseam last time when we delivered in the occasion of the delivery of the annual financial statement last week, Thursday, is the municipal debt problem. Let me tell you, people are going through an exceptionally difficult period. A lot is on this podium, we are privileged. From here, we're going to be spending time with our families. When we get home, there's access. Open the fridge, we have a choice of what to eat, what to drink. Majority of the people who are watching us today don't have that benefit. So it's a real problem. It's a genuine problem. The group CFO was sharing with me because he was at the cold phase of the consulting process of NERSA. So you have pensioners in 2,190. And we know that the average the cost of electricity for an average household low income is 1,200. So he earns or she earns 2,190. You take out 1,200. And you know they are diligent payers. They start by paying this. So you have wiped out half of what the state has given to. So on the one hand, with our expanded flow of, if you like, the social wage, the state gives 2,190. On the other hand, we take it back. We take half of that. There's no impact. And let me tell you, I mean, the suggestion that, of course, there are those who choose not to pay. I'm separating them from the great majority who can't pay. So it's important that we fashion a solution to address this. Accept that you have an economic problem. The great majority of people have to make choices. Like I said, they are not going to be celebrating. It's a Black Christmas for them. And then we'll be switching them off. And then next, whatever the tariff increase is, whether it's 10, it's 15, it's 30, it's 36, really they still can't afford what is before. So we are just pushing them deeper and deeper into conditions of poverty. And we have agreed ourselves and ESCOM as that we think we can do better with the municipalities. It's not the panacea, it's not the silver bullet, but people are finding it difficult. So it will be irresponsible of me just to stand here and say we're aggressively going to get this money. It's not possible. So I think we must find new ways of doing it. And I did say that there's great alignment between ourselves and ESCOM. We'll share that with SALGA. I'm confident that we'll find that alignment with SALGA and introduce an intervention. Remember that priority number 2 of the 7th administration is to fight poverty and reduce the cost of living. It's very tough. And utilities, the cost of utilities, electricity and water is pushing people deeper and deeper into poverty. So that's the admission I'm making. It's unsustainable, it's untenable. You are creating a perfect storm that can undermine a legitimate government. So once you are unable to solve it over a period of time, it becomes a national security problem. It's an existential problem for the country. So it's in our collective interest to do this, to resolve this question. So most of us, after this, will be celebrating. The great majority won't be celebrating because of the economic situation. I really want to say we feel their pain, we hear their cries, we understand their anger. We will resolve this problem. I give them, and I'm confident that we have made our views with NERSA. It will not come this increase at 6%. I'm more than confident. I've said that to the country, putting my head on the block. Confident that we will not come at those levels, but we'll allow NERSA to make that that determination. And they did say that in early January. And then we must address the issues of energy losses and reduction. These are technical losses. These are issues around the load reduction. Like I say, for an average person, when I started here, I said 272 days of load shedding, the best performance in 5 years. There are people who are listening to me and say, but the president, the minister is talking hogwash. I don't have electricity. What are you talking about? So you can by load shedding. There are periods in the day where our people don't have electricity. So I will not stand here and say, no, the president said must resolve load shedding. The problem of load reduction is my problem. The problem of people not being able to afford electricity, and by extension, I mean the problem of the ministry. will come and resolve. And then the issues of human capital and ethical high performance. So those are the soft issues I'm talking about that are receiving attention. And of course, next round of the Electricity Regulation Amendment Act, the kind of interventions we'll be making, successful separation of NTCSA. Now we're moving on the legal separation of distribution. We need to find a new model on operating model on distribution. Very significant part. There are municipalities I went to Tokoloko the other day in the Free State. The municipalities just don't have the means, the technical means to run an electricity department. We want to work with them. And I did say to them, we're not coming there to take over. Although they had taken a council resolution to say ESCOM must take over. I said, no, it's not in your interest. ESCOM is coming to work with you as a partner to capacitate you. And when we come back with this intervention, we'll say a period of 3 to 5 years, we'll do the following. By the time we leave that municipality, it's able to provide the electricity function. It's able to collect on its own. It's able to pay ESCOM. And it's able to reuse, deploy this collected money to meet social needs, social infrastructure. So it's in our interest that the municipalities must function. So we're not coming here to lament the state of municipalities, but is to work with them to ensure that we're able to distribution business must gear itself for the EV market. So if we are going to say we are going to have electric vehicles, there must be charging stations. So if you like, there must be petrol stations for this. So the model must the distribution model, the new model. I know that Ragep and Mr. Bala, they are working on that. You must gear yourself to that. Of course, from generation, you must gear yourself to say there's new demand that is coming. So as we transition to electric vehicles, there's new demand that you are creating, and you must be able to meet that. There's a proliferance of EVs. Driving to my rural Limpopo, I get to what is now transport, and I get there. They say, "Sorry, Mr. Ramokgopa, there's no electricity, doc, so you can't charge." I'm stranded. Imagine you are getting to a garage. They tell you, "Hey, sorry, there's no fuel." So it doesn't work. So and so we are undermining, if you like, the success of that program. So they must gear themselves for that, and also the launch of the distribution energy trade for market stimulation. And then we work on the modernization of the distribution grid. I'd made the point that it's important that we are able to modernize the distribution network, the smart grid. We'll be launching the two pilots there in the two villages in Limpopo. I think that's the combination of our ability to draw from our renewable resources in the form of solar, store it, and then provide to these rural communities. We did say that also got an ambition of achieving true universal access. 30 years of a democratic government, we have not achieved universal access. Universal household has got access to electricity that is available and affordable. Two important requirements. It must be available and affordable. That's very important. And I'll say how we want to achieve that. And of course, enhance customer experience. We lamented the fact that when during the period of transition from the legacy systems of the meters of smart meters, you could see that there's a gulf between the ESCOM and communities. I think we need to close it. Better communication, ESCOM offices available, of ESCOM being responsive. Of course, the experiences differ from one area to the other, but by our own admission, I think we're able to do much better than we have been able to achieve. And then, what are the policy interventions for the ministry as I move to the IRP? I'm happy to say that the consultations are done. We're taking it to network, and I'm confident that the first quarter of next year, we are going to publish that IRP. So we are ready, and then to cabinet. So the first quarter of next year, by March, the latest, it should be out. I think it's very important document. And then the gas master plan, again, similar to the IRP process, but this is a bit behind. We're still going to have qualitative engagement, and this one we're targeting the second quarter. There are major issues on the gas side, and issues that requires immediate attention. The gas cliff that I keep on referring to, working with the major players, and we have seen that we've been to countries that are prepared to give us the molecules. You need to resolve the issues at what price point are those molecules. There are risks that you are exposed to, the cost of the commodity, the currency risk. You need to resolve all of that. You must resolve also who's going to be the aggregator. And one of the biggest enablers on the gas side is the gas to power solutions, because it takes up the volumes, and by definition, should bring down the unit cost of the molecules. It's also about the location of the facility. Where are we going to receive it? Mozambique, Richards Bay, and all of that. So those are issues that are confronting us, but we are far advanced on those. Once we are able to go through the necessary consultation process, I'll be able to share to the general public where we at. And then the electricity pricing policy and the free basic electricity. 2023, I think, or 2021, that's the last time 2001, I'm sorry. That's when we introduced the free basic electricity, 50 kilowatt hour of electricity. I mean, things have changed. Our view is that we should be at about 150 to 200 kilowatt hours of free electricity, and to provide the kind of relief I spoke about earlier on, of the pensioners, of the poor. So we'll be making a proposal in that range. Of course, you must cost it, because someone must pay for it, and it's national treasury. So we're working on the review of that, and also the electricity pricing policy has gone through, and net like this one. We're just doing, I think, the final stakeholder community engagement. There's some degree of revision. We must do that. We're confident that by the first quarter of 2025, we should be out in the public. So these are the three broad policy issues that are receiving attention. Quarter one up to quarter two, we hope to achieve that. And then the big one, because all of them are big, is the ITP pilot, the independent transmission program pilot. So you know that we've done a market sounding RFI, has been issued, closes at the 28th of February. Next year, we want to do, and it will guide what will constitute the next steps. But we want to do our first RFP before the end of next year. So that's major. We are now entering into this area that we are going to expand and modernize the grid and find bespoke financing solutions on how we are going to do that. It's a big ticket item, preliminary indication, 390 billion rand. Fiscus can carry, NTCSA balance sheet can carry it. So we are doing that market exercise. So I'm confident that, and then we'll issue the regulations in relation to how we will be dealing with this, at least in the long term. And issues around the universal access strategy and implementation plan. I made the point earlier on, 30 years into the life of a democratic government, we have not truly achieved universal access. There are villages. I'm not talking about new villages. Old villages that have never had electricity. So working with the team led by DDG Kekana, we are designing what we call the INEP program, the Integrated National Electrification Program. That grant, we are guaranteed 4 billion rand per annum. So we're setting up a project management unit, and is going to use all types of tech to be launching in Limpopo, are not connected to the grid. It's solar, and we're able to roll it out. So that's what we're doing. We think, I say we think, because we're still working on those numbers. Depending who you speak to, you still have about 2.1 million houses that, and then, or 3 million houses. Something somewhere there in between. We'll resolve it. But what we know is that 4 billion rand per annum over 5 years, 20 billion will not be sufficient. We've worked out what the unit cost is, even having brought it down. We need to bring in other players into that space to help us to achieve this universal access. We will set ourselves a target. And that target, I want to say now, we want to achieve universal access in the 7th administration. Of course, that's a moving target. Remember, there will be new settlements coming. So we'll define what is the percentage of houses that will be connected for us to say this universal access is a moving target. It's a structural thing. I mean, if you come to think about it. And then the issues of municipal sustainability. And then I want to conclude by making the following announcement. Like I said, what I've been saying now has to do with ESCOM and has to do with municipality. But you need new generation capacity for you to be able to sustain this. You can't be over reliant on ESCOM. Everyone else is failing. course, ESCOM still is the anchor. If ESCOM achieve that 70% EAF, it will anchor the South African economy. But you want to de-risk the energy mix rather. So I did say that it's important that we get to accelerate the bid windows, working with Mr. Magoro and the team and the IPP. We think we know what some of the touch points we engage, go back, re-engage with stakeholders, including internally NTCSA and the various departments that makes a contribution in how we do the bid windows. And we are aligned, we are able to create, if you like, the processes that it takes for us to get to financial close. And it takes a lot of engagement also with the financial sector and on also the developers. I think you can imagine it's a number of players in that space, but from our side, we have a sense. So we went out bid window number 5. We wanted to get 5,000 megawatts, and then it was technology specific. 1,800 must come from solar photovoltaic. 3,000 of that must come from onshore wind. On the wind one, say the following that the prices that we had received are a bit exorbitant or pricey, or more than what we think we can afford. So we're not going to, if you like, announce preferred bidder status for wind. We think there's room for negotiation. So Mr. Magore and the team will go back to those who have submitted. Remember that as we do this, we must protect the consumer, protect NTCSA as a procurer. So we've determined what that point is. So I'm sure that Mr. Magoro will, the team can expand on that. So what I mean now is to talk to the 1,800 of photovoltaic. We received around 48 bids, totaling about 10.2 gigawatts. What this says is that there's a significant, a huge appetite by private sector to participate. Although the window we said we want so much, almost double of what we said we wanted. And then, of course, like I said, 40 of those were solar PV and 8 were wind. And the were wind submissions. And the closing date was on the 15th. And then, as a result of our assessment and grid capacity, only 23 bidders with grid access then form part of the pool that went to the next the next stage. 19 of these came from were solar PV bidders, and then 4 of these were wind. So you can see what that statement says. It's an issue that we must resolve internally. It's appetite. The limiting factor is grid capacity. And that's why that the ITP, going out to the market, say, help us to find a way of how best we can expand the grid. It's very important because now grid is becoming a binding constraint. It's going to undermine the ability of the country to benefit from these renewable energy resources. So there's the 8 PV, and then we mentioned the preferred bidders, High Solar Consortium, Palladium Solar Consortium, Copper Solar One Consortium, Vanadium Solar One Consortium, Middle Point Mercury Solar PV2, Honest Poor Solar One Consortium, and Honest Poor Solar 2 consortium. And then we also get to share with you what those the megawatts are. And of course, you can see now in the provinces of Mpumalanga, Limpopo, the Free State, and Northwest. So you can see now the Capes are not here. The Capes are not here because we've exhausted grid capacity. Now we're going off there. I went to my rural village there, so we're getting closer. But like I said, I mean, on a more serious note, I think the capacity issues needs to be resolved. And then on the battery storage, you know that this is the second bid window of the battery energy storage independent power producer procurement program. This bid targeted substations, and we're very specific in the north areas in ESCOM language. We talk about the Northwest, the Free State, and Gauteng. So we're very deliberate about where we wanted this. And then, of course, we're specific to those particular 8 sites. Those are the 8 sites. And for one site, we only have one bidder that was appointed. The target 615 megawatts. And we're able to substations there. OCs around project name, Roy Copies, S, Mulilo, Mercury, Velder, the 10, the best, RTPS
we get home. So that's the part of the 615 megawatts that went out for. So I think it's important that there's a sense that there's no over concentration on ESCOM. We're looking at new generation capacity. We're looking at storage to continue to evolve. And that's why I said we're talking about the mix. It's not one technology over the other, but as we choose this technology, affordability is very important. And that's why the wind allocations were not done just because of affordability. So we can have um, um, uh, excess generation, and then it can be it's not affordable. I mean, it's like I did make the point that there's a lot of communities who are going to have Black Christmas, but you can go to any township, a retail store, the shelves are full. We just don't have the money to afford that. So we don't want to get to that situation on electricity, where the shelves are full. We are generating, but no one can afford that. I think that will be a major catastrophe. So I thought that we should give you that overview. Of course, we're long because of the loss of this engagement, but I think it's important that we take you through the journey that we have traveled and the future, that we've got every intention of resolving the energy crisis in the country. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister, for the announcement, but also for the reflection on the journey that has been traveled and the projections as indicated. We will now open the floor to questions from members of the media. And we've got our colleague, Takalani, who will also be fielding our online questions. So we'll start with questions after Antoinette. So it's 1, 2. Any other in this first round? You can go ahead, Antoinette, and we'll stick to our established protocols where you will introduce yourself and the media house you represent.
The resolution. And then I'd just like to find out the curtailment rules and also the grid access rules have not been finalized. How crucial is that and how long will we still have to wait for that? I mean, does it make sense to award these IPPs if that is not resolved?
Thanks, Antoinette. You can go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Innocent from SNBC Channel Africa. Thank you for the opportunity. Mr. You spoke about real tax, which translates to energy poverty, and you spoke also about electricity pricing policy. So the question is, if NERSA's determination is not satisfying, what steps are you going to take moving forward? The second question is, South Africa is often considered as one of the leading countries in the continent in terms of just energy transition, but some quarters, unions, and civil society groups feel like we're still far from actually abandoning coal. Then the question is, what are some of the conversations that are ongoing with unions and civil society groups alike to carry them along and make them understand the importance of this in line with the United Nations Sustainable Goals?
Thanks, Innocent. Takalani, do you have questions online?
From News 24. And the first one is, what is the minister's view on the outlook for load shedding in 2025? And will load shedding return? The second one is, does the minister have an update? And the other one is, community set 6.9 is the case. The question that came in August. The question is, why has there been a large jump in SGT?
Thanks, Takalani. We'll take responses. I think we'll start with the generation-related questions, the Google Unit 2, as well as OCGT. And then from there, we'll hand over to get responses on the curtailment before handing over to the Minister. Thanks.
Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and all protocol observed. Quebec Unit 2 currently is in commissioning, critical stages of commissioning, and with the reactor getting into critical and going through the compliance issues that were requested by the regulator. We should be getting, I mean, before I think end of this week. We're planning to have, the turbine to be run up from the 27th. And I think first synchronization should happen by the 3rd and so on. Yeah. It can be earlier, but currently that is basically, like a program. Then the OCGT, I think the minister in his presentation mentioned that we've seen a slight increase, like in UCLF against what our target was. It's about 5%. And we also, doing maintenance, I think 5% above our plan. Our plan was to do to do, like at this time of the year, 15%, PCLF, we're sitting at about 17%. I think the combination of the two, and also, I mean, the inclement weather and not getting, additional, power from other users, like we had to, like, OCGTs. That's basically the main reason, yeah.
Just on curtailment, just to maybe clarify that curtailment was not necessarily linked to Bid Window 7. Curtailment was a separate process that ESCOM and the regulator were engaging on. The regulator is still to make the final decision on curtailment, following which then that capacity that's available will be released to the market for the developers to get access to. So when the decision is made, the developers still have to apply to ESCOM for cost estimate letters, and then they will be able to bid in whichever program they want to participate. So it was not linked to Bid Window 7. Thanks.
Thanks, Antoinette, Innocent, Ibrahim, and Helmut for the questions. Just on the exemptions, yes, I should have made this point. Thanks for asking the question and helps me to clarify. So the president says the error, the amendment is with effect from the 1st of January, and then it suspends the implementation of what constitute, I think, distribution reticulation. What Salga had raised a concern, so in the current form of the current definition that was sitting in the amendment was to undermine the ability of municipalities and to continue to be going concerned because the electricity income is a big part of their revenues. Essentially, we are going to introduce other players by relaxing that definition. And also the concern was that we're going to have your good payers being, for lack of poached from the municipalities, and therefore municipalities are going to be left with those who cannot afford to pay, or those who choose not to pay. So then the suspension is in place. What that means is that we revert to the old definition, but in the meantime, allowing myself and Salga to have that conversation and see how best we can remedy that situation, and then go back to the president on what is possible. Undermining the ability of the municipalities to continue to generate that revenue, but also just achieving the ambitions and the spirit of the amendment to ensure that the electricity ecosystem in the country is a bit more robust and enabling for new players to come on stream. And then to Innocent's question, yes, I think you already have a situation of energy poverty. So you might not have load reduction. You have families that diligent payers, but the electricity is so unaffordable that there are days in a month that they just can't pay. Find that they can afford to pay for 20 days, and then for 10 days they make other means, and then they get to pay their electricity. So, but of course, we articulate what the implication of the tariff increase will do to poor households, and what it also do to ESCOM's revenue. So it's important that you are able to balance those going forward. And that's why I make the point earlier on that ourselves and ESCOM a bit more aligned on what are the kind of interventions that my colleagues at SALGA, with the leadership of SALGA. I'm confident that we are likely going to align so that before I announce what is this broader intervention we're making in the municipal space, at least it is supported by SALGA, just as the ministry. So we are confident that we will get to that stage. We are very far from abandoning coal. Let me just give you an illustration. I just said we are synchronizing unit number 6 of Kusit. So it's another point. I talk about clean forms of generation. Let me give you, we recently came back from Japan. Japan far advanced, they're generating using coal, but they're co-firing it with ammonia, 20% co-firing. And they're able to show that the NOxes and the SOxes and particulate matter, so these are the ones that has to do with air quality, are coming down. And they're able to show that the CO2 is coming down. This has to do with the issues around climate change, degradation of the ozone layer. And then they say they're now ramping it up to 50% or co-firing. And then what they see on the efficiency side, that with the co-firing, they see that the efficiency is not compromised. They anticipate that if they were to get to 50, they reduce by about 3 percentage points. But again, they are using an endowment, or they don't have coal, by the way, so they're still importing from other. I make the point, when we have a conversation around our commitment to greening the South African economy, it's not an anti-coal articulation. It's an articulation for cleaner forms of generation. So if science can resolve the issues of the emissions, can resolve the issues of air quality using your endowment, then there is no reason why you must abandon that. So that's the point I make. Unless if your stance is in principle against a particular fuel source, then it's a different conversation. And I don't think it will lead us far. We agree with obligations to those communities from an air quality point of view, to the environment in relation to CO2. If there's anything that helps us to resolve that, we are going to embrace it because we're sitting with this endowment. And then you are making an important point. Yes, we have started, long started, even in the previous administration. We have engaged the stakeholders, as in the unions, some of the NGOs in the space, and there are others who just choose no. If the meeting you are coming to talk to us, we don't want to talk about code. There's no conversation there. Because I'm not going to come and talk to you about with ammonia, and the Japanese experience is not an experiment. They are doing it at a commercial scale. It's something that we can use. Then we are going to embrace it. So I think it's important that we have that conversation. But Innocent, your point is a valid one. Just trying to reconcile how are you going to transition, abandon your own endowments, still protect your national interest. And we think that you can do all of the above without necessarily abandoning your endowments, but using technology to ensure that you are able to succeed. The outlook of for load shedding, that outlook was articulated in the summer plan. So I'm not about to repeat what ESCOM said. ESCOM said if the unplanned capacity loss factor is 13,000 and below, we should not have load shedding. And I did make the point that it's about 11,600 or about 1,500 below what that number is. So we'll keep to that. And that's really they've shared the outlook. And then yes, you are right, Ibrahim, on the streamlining of the bid windows. I did say that Mr. Magoro and the team at the IPP, they've done sterling work. They've produced a body of, because they're at the cold face of this procurement exercise. if we are to address them, we are likely going to see the speeding of this bid windows, and also put it the streamlining. And they also identify the IPP officers led by Bernard and engage with the stakeholders. We did have the first round of stakeholder engagement, and we got some of the very, very useful views from some of the players there. Mr. Magoro consolidated that and brought their own experiences. We'll go back and announce how best we think we can streamline this process going forward so that we can benefit from this exercise. Remember, like I said, the binding constraint still remains in your Cape provinces, the issues around the grid capacity. Of course, he has identified some of that great NTCSA conversation about the ability of the NTCSA balance sheet to support that, or what additional bespoke financing instrument you can introduce to help you to achieve that ambition without burdening the balance sheet of ESCOM and the NTCSA in the manner that benefits everyone. I guess that that pilot that we are going to do, the market sounding exercise, is going to help us to answer the majority of those questions, and then we can design an instrument by next year that is going to help us as we go out. This market readiness, market acceptability, but also acceptable for the internal stakeholders. What are those the internal players, national treasury, ourselves, national treasury, and NTCSA in relation to how you can construct that.
Thank you very much, Minister, and members for the response. From my notes, I trust all the questions from the round of questions in the same format, starting with those who are in the room.
End of January. It's confirmed that there's no going to run up to 5 tariffs concern to run the time and
Thank you, Antoinette. Any other questions? Follow-up questions in the room? Okay, there are none. Takalani, any questions online?
Thank you. From and the question to the minister, the first one is, please can you give an update on when the long-awaited South African renewable energy plan be published? What is really like? Please can the minister provide on the findings South African National Energy Development Institute team in respect of the city of Joburg or City Power ESCOM billing accuracy report. And the last one from Caroline from Transport TV channel. The question is, can the minister explain what exactly happens with the tokens traffic? What are the measures in place to prevent it? Thank you.
It's with the question posed to Mr. Magoro, be followed by Mr. Kasim, and then the one on the tariffs, its distribution. Include with the minister.
Yeah. So on the question of the tariffs for solar, which is what has been announced today. So there's 8 been announced. The cheapest, which I think it's important to mention, came from Mpumalanga, was at 42 cents per kilowatt hour. The most expensive was 49 cents per kilowatt hour. The average tariff, cents per kilowatt hour. That's for the 8 preferred bidders on the solar side. We have not announced the wind preferred bidders because of what the minister said. We still need to enter into negotiations with those bidders. And we'll make an announcement when that process is concluded. maybe another point to mention, there was a technology reallocation that the RFP made provision for, and there are still engagements within the department and other stakeholders, the buyer and the preferred bidders, to look at whether we can allocate more solar PV because of the undersubscription on the wind side. But again, the minister will make announcement once that process is concluded. Thank you.
Thanks. Morning, everyone. Actually, your question around the NERSA decision, MYPD6 and retail tariff plan, I think we've always said it's a difficult decision of the regulator. Also appreciating the delay in concluding the public hearings. So yes, they have to apply their mind. 25th of January, I think that's the indication in the media statement for MYPD6. They're going to hold the public hearings for the retail tariff plan also around the 20th of January. If we get one, you must get the MYPD6 and it can't be delayed further than end of the 25th Jan. You'll probably need the retail tariff plan decision probably 3 weeks later. If we get all of that by the 20th of February, we believe that working with NASA, we can then table the electricity tariff via the minister to Parliament by the 15th of March. So far, no intention to request any extensions from Minister of Finance in terms of MFMA tabling. Thank you.
Good morning. Well, if I could just deal with the matter of the token traffic, assuming that this refers to what we've announced on the annual financial statement around the illicit tokens that went through online vending. The investigations continues, both internal from ESCOM, and again, it's also a matter that's been related to the South African security agencies. So the Hawks are also involved in the investigation. Once we are ready to share some progress on those issues, we will then make time for the media. I think that's what I can share up to now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris, for SAREM. We are ready. So we are good to go. So we are confident that before end of February, we should be launching SAREM. So we have ticked all the boxes, so we are good to go on the SAREM. And then the work of Sanedi. Remember, the context of the question is that when there was that dispute between the City of Johannesburg and ESCOM, we have agreed to undertake a process, and that process including the need for us to resolve the dispute in relation to what the City Power claims to be inaccurate metering of what they were consuming or receiving on the part of ESCOM as the bulk supply, and ESCOM was adamant that their readings are accurate. And then we agreed that we will then appoint a body that will help us to resolve that question, and that body was Sanedi. And then we had given the teams about 14 days for them to be able to provide an answer to that. And the initial was, and then by the 4th of November, we should come back with what is essentially what we think, having engaged with the various parties and visited the site, and then the various synchronization of the because we should be able to resolve the question.
teams then came back, and Sanedi is the one that came back and said that we need additional amount of time for them to do those studies. Have to retrieve some data from another third party and contractual issues related to that data availability. So I'm happy that we have cleared that, but the data is intense. So as long as we do the right thing, the team has asked for additional extension. But remember, in the meantime, City Power had an obligation to continue to service their current account. Because after a few delays, they've been able to service that. They're attempting to keep to that. When I instances, not necessarily the whole amount. So the spirit is there. So the payment is coming through, and then the technical teams are asking for an additional amount of time. I said we'll invest whatever time is required for us to get to a stage where we're getting to confidence on both sides, as provided by the independent player, which is Sanid, on the accuracy of this. And I think there are lessons that can. And going forward, if there's any other municipality that has got a similar grievance, then we know as a Sanid what needs to be done going forward. So we need to invest as much time as possible in this exercise, and we'll reap the rewards going forward. Because Sanid will likely going to develop a template on how you reconcile this, how we're able to deal with these disputes going forward. And of course, I mean, looking at the future is but on the distribution side, this is going to be a big part of the conversations that we are going to have. So as long as the payments are made, or attempt to keep up with the payments, that's in keeping with the spirit, and then we wait for those answers to come from Sanedi. And like I said, we'll use this experiences. If there's another occurrence of a similar nature, then Sanedi will have accumulated experience from the Johannesburg and Eskom dispute. And I don't think it comes bigger than City Power in Joburg for obvious reasons. So I think it's going to help us going forward. So I'm confident that we're going to get it right. But I want to take the opportunity to thank members of thank you very much for making it possible for us to communicate with South Africans. We really, and those who religiously join these briefings and ask the questions. I mean, these are piercing questions, these are robust questions, and I think the questions are asked from the point of view of trying to first to make sure that the public is properly informed, but also to make sure that we are accountable. I think as government, I must say to everyone who have been attending this and asking the questions, we're extremely grateful for that. Please continue to do that. There are instances where we're not able to answer the questions to satisfaction. There are instances where we ask to come back, and we do come back. So thank you very much for understanding. And I think it's become more robust and more useful when it's as engaging as it does. And I must say that the colleagues who get to ask questions, they are people who have invested a lot of their in understanding the electricity ecosystem, the energy space in the country. We really appreciate it. Of course, these are difficult questions, but they help us to remain accountable. And just to the rest of the country, thank you very much. We wish everyone a happy and merry festive season. We know that, like I said, communities are going through an exceptionally difficult period. Like I said, we understand, we hear your cries, feel your pain, and understand your anger, at least as it relates to electricity. The assurance I'm giving you, the South African public, is that we'll do everything possible. First, to make sure that the electricity is affordable. We're introducing, like I said, we'll come back to you on those interventions. How we provide this poor, including free basic electricity, the quantum, how it reaches them, and the ability for us to use our natural endowment to be able to ensure that the electricity is affordable, and also to industry. Will make sure that we continue to generate new players on the generation side. The work that Mr. Magoro and the team are doing very, very important, so that we're able to do this generation in the country. But we wish everyone safety and happiness during. Thank you very much.
Thank you.